Hey guys, Loot Wizard here with another video on Gems of War, and this is going to be an interesting video. I'm going to be covering the basics of how I build teams in Gems of War. So, as you can see here on the screen, I have four main roles that troops play in the game, and it's mana generator, spell, skull attacks, support, or defense. And we're going to be talking about those four roles and what troops you can use to kind of build a team around that. So let's get right into it. There are four main roles that troops fill, and as I just mentioned, it's mana generation, attack, support, and defense. Now, a team consists of four spots for troops to fill these four roles. But first, let's take a look at the importance of using a hero in every team. And your hero is very important. There are benefits to using a hero class, which include weapons. Only a hero class can use weapons. A hero has three traits like a normal troop, but are usually more powerful. A hero has talents that grant you extra abilities. So talents, you only get those from your heroes. You don't get talents from actual troops. So that's something that can really empower your team. And finally, one of the benefits of having a hero in your team at all times is because of the bonus that you get from hero armor, which can give you bonus gold, souls, and XP. So you're going to make more gold in the game by having your hero in the team, and you're going to have more souls as well. Now, that doesn't happen automatically. You do have to purchase with gems and armor. As you can see over here on my picture, I have a picture here of the dragon armor, which gives you the bonus of 100% gold, 50% souls, and 50% XP. And there is other sets of armor in the game as well. So here are a few of the other benefits. We already mentioned these, but these are some pictures to give you some ideas of what I'm talking about when I talk about traits, talents, and weapons. So traits here is a part of your different hero classes. There's three of them. I just pulled out one of them here that shows that the Titan class will give all giants a 50% start of mana in the battle. As long as that hero class is assigned to your team and you have other giant troops in there, that will take effect. Now, there is a talent tree that has a lot of different talents, and they're different for every class. I have a snapshot here of a few of the talents from the Titan class, and Rock Solid is one of the really great talents of this class and of a few others that allows your hero to gain barrier when you match brown gems, and that is very important for a lot of different battles in the game and different events. So that's something that is pretty unique to hero classes, is that it can gain barrier when matching brown gems. Now here's a picture of a couple of the weapons that you will gain by just leveling up in the game. Mang is really important. It's powerful all throughout the game from low levels to high levels. It's used in events, and it's just a great weapon. So that is a weapon here that you can get that really is powerful, even over a lot of troops. And we do have a Mountain Crusher here as another weapon, which doesn't do any damage on its own, but it is a mana generator and one of the best in the game for generating mana. So as you can see, when I talked about those different roles, the first role that I mentioned was a mana generator. And so your hero class can operate under those different roles. You can pick a weapon that's centered around mana generation, or you can pick a weapon that is around damage like this one. And there are many other weapons in the game as well. Now, moving on here, let's return back to these four main roles. And let's think about these four roles with our hero class in mind and those different weapons that you can choose for it. So keep that in mind, keep your hero in mind and what class you're using when you are building a team. So I'm going to go over a couple of the definitions that I've kind of placed underneath these different roles. And for a mana generator, I consider any troop or hero class weapon that does these different things here I consider to be a mana generator. If it destroys gems, if it explodes gems, creates gems, converts gems, gives allies mana, enchants allies, or creates a storm, all of those things I consider to be a mana generator troop. Now, it has to do that as its primary function. If it does it as a secondary thing, then it still qualifies, but it's not primarily a mana generator. So let's move over here to Defender, and a Defender, in my opinion, is a troop that reduces 8% of skull damage, or reduces 8% of spell damage, inflicts entangle, inflicts silence, inflicts web, inflicts disease, disrupts the enemy team order. Any of those things are very defensive. So, but a troop that focuses on doing those things primarily, that is, in my opinion, a Defender troop. Now, as we'll get into later, there are lots of troops in the game that do multiple things, and a lot of Mythic troops do try to focus on doing really well at 2 or more of these different roles. Moving on to the attack role, we have skull damage and spell damage, which are 2 different types of damage that goes on here within your attack troops. Covering skull damage here, it will either create skulls, converts a color to skulls, stun an enemy, it will give them Hunter's Mark, and Hunter's Mark enemies will take 2 times the skull damage. Or Enrage, an enraged troop will do 1.5 times skull damage, and it will completely ignore that troop's traits. So if that troop has a let's say 60% chance or 60% reduction of skull damage, if you have an enraged troop that attacks it with skulls, that percentage of damage reduction will be completely ignored, and it'll hit it with full force, and it will actually do 1.5 times the normal damage as well. So those are important things to take into consideration when you're building a skull team. And also any other kind of things like extra damage based on entangled troops, or anything that's in the traits of a particular skull troop that does extra damage. Like there is a troop web spinner that does extra skull damage to troops that are webbed, and it webs them when it does skull damage. So that's really powerful. So if you look for those different things, those skull troops will do a lot of damage. And of course, Doom Skulls is included in this here, where I just say skulls. Moving on to spell damage, we have damage to all enemies, random damage, scatter damage, splash damage, true damage, steal life, charm, and devour. All of those things are basically what I consider to be a type of spell damage. Now, for a support troop, we have any troop that focuses on giving life to allies, armor to allies, or giving attack to allies, cleansing allies from any negative status effects, giving barrier to allies, giving allies positive status effects, or giving enemies negative status effects, stealing skills, eliminating skills, or transforming enemy troops, or even summoning friendly troops. All of those things is what I consider to be a support troop. And support troops are really good in some cases, but you don't want to focus on just support, and you don't want to focus just on defense. You want to focus mostly on your mana and your attack, and you want to focus all of your mana into those attack troops and be able to loop that back and back, and then support and defense troops should aid that process. So a good troop fills one role really well, but a great troop fills 2 or 3 roles. And we're going to be talking about that here as we go through building a couple of teams. So, as I mentioned, team building for me is all about attack and mana. And that's what you want to focus on. So you want to decide basically what kind of attack you're going to be doing, and then you want to find some kind of troop or hero weapon that's going to generate mana for those attack troops, and that will make your team pretty powerful. And as a basic rule, when you're building a team, you do want to try to use as many different colored mana troops as possible so that you don't have a lot of mana blocking going on. That's very important. Also here, I have two different basic setups, basic team and then an advanced team. And basically this is kind of my thought process on this is if you have a defender troop, you want to put them at the top because a defender troop is going to be doing a lot of it's going to have a lot of reduction to skull damage, and that's going to protect the rest of your troops. Now, it may not protect your troops from spell damage, so your defender troop may not be completely versatile. Some defender troops are, and we'll get into that, where some defender troops will actually help protect the rest of the team. But this is kind of a basic layout here to have a defender at the top, and then have an attack troop or hero, and then your mana generator either here or in the bottom, depending upon how colors are mixing together here. But I definitely say that it's good, especially when you're starting out, to have at least 2 attack troops in your team and a mana generator. Then you can choose between if you want a defender, a support, or a third attack, but you definitely want a mana generator in every single team because your team is going to be really slow, and a rule of thumb for me is that if you don't have a way to generate fast mana, you're not going to be doing much damage, even if you have mythic troops in your team. So every team needs to do spell or skull attacks to win. The faster your attack troops do damage, the more powerful your team is. And let's look at the advanced team here really quick. Defender usually goes in the top. Now, if you're using a really good defender, he's going to also generate mana for you. Attack and support troops do exist where it does attack and it also has support functions. And then there are troops that do attack plus generate mana. And then there's troops that just simply do spell attack. So what I'm going to be doing is going through a team setup that shows basically what I picked to fill in these different roles. So starting with the basic team of defender, attack, mana, generator, and attack, we're going to be using the Dwarven Gate as our defender, Blast Cannon as an attack, and the weapon Essence of Evil as our mana generator. And finally, we're going to be doing spell attack with the Atlanta troop. So the Dwarven Gate is a really good defense troop, and it's a common troop, but it's really good even later in the game. And as you can see here from the stats, its ability, as far as defense goes, it has 3 ways to defend your team. 1, it reduces skull damage by 50%, as you can see over here in its traits. And 2, it gives all other allies barrier. So when you cast it, it will give all of the allies barrier. And it will give itself armor. That is 3 ways that it will allow your whole team to stay in the battle longer. And also, as a bonus, it will be acting as somewhat of a mana generator. Now, it's not its primary function. Its primary function is defense. But as a secondary function, it will be giving some mana to your team. So whenever you cast it, it'll give 5 mana to the rest of the allies on your team. So moving on here to the first attack troop, and it actually does 3 roles here. We're using it mostly for an attack, so what it's going to do is 30 damage to a random enemy, but that's the attack portion. The support function here that it will be doing is silence, and a silenced enemy, it will stop it from casting a spell or gaining any more mana until that effect wears off. And silence is pretty powerful to have that. And finally, it will be helping us a little bit with mana generation because it has the trait Stone Link for gaining bonus to brown mana, and since it uses brown mana, that's really good there, so it will help itself to gain some mana. Now in the third spot, we're using our hero weapon as our main mana generator. As you saw, we already do have a little bit of mana generation going on, but this is going to be the main one. And it will explode up to 24 gems of the enemy's mana color. So you can choose an enemy and cast this weapon on it, and it will explode a bunch of gems for that color. Now, the second thing that's really important here is that it will also function as a secondary support and defense troop, because it's going to be inflicting all negative status effects on an enemy, which means we can do extra spell damage, we can do extra skull damage to whatever this troop is that we will select, as well as protecting us in the defense sense, because it will also get entangled, which means it can't do skull damage to us, and it will be also silenced, so it can't cast a spell either. So this is a really powerful weapon. You can acquire this weapon by winning 250 battles with the Plague Lord class. So I definitely recommend to get this if you don't have it yet. Moving on to our last attack troop, we have the Atlanta troop here, which is going to be primarily an attack troop. So it's going to do 24 damage to all enemies when we cast it. And it does have a relatively low mana cost of 13 there. And since we have so much mana generation going on between the Dwarven Gate, which is giving 5 mana to all enemies when it's cast, and we also have the explosion of up to 24 gems with our Essence of Evil weapon, this weapon should power up pretty quickly. And besides its damage, we also do have a little bit of mana generation going on with it as well, which is an air link. It gives a bonus to yellow mana, and it uses yellow, so that's good. It'll be giving itself a little extra boost there. One final note on this troop as well is that if it's the last troop remaining, it does have a trait here that gives it a 50% chance to ignore armor with skull damage, which can help us in the end if the rest of our troops get taken out. So if we look at this, before we move on to an advanced troop team setup, that's pretty much what we're looking at here for a basic team. So we covered pretty much, if we go back to the beginning here, we had our defender, which is the Dwarven Gate. Then we got attack, which is blast cannon. Mana generators or Essence of Evil. Attack would be Atlanta. And that's kind of a basic setup. And as you can see here and notice that all of these mana colors are different, which is very important because nothing will block the mana from Blast Cannon or the Essence of Evil or the Atlanta troop. Everything will have its own mana color. And that's very important too for the speed of your team. Because if you have a lot of troops that are blocking mana, you have to fill up this troop first. So let's say if Atlanta was using red and brown as well as the blast cannon, I would have to fill up the blast cannon before the mana went down to Atlanta. This way, since they're using different colors, we can right away fill everything up pretty quickly. So let's skip back down here and cover the advanced team. And this is kind of the advanced team that I set up here. I've never shown this team off on my channel. This is a team I've been kind of playing around with for a little while. And I thought I'd just include it in here because it is a little bit more of an advanced setup. But it uses these principles here that I have listed out here. So we have a defender mana generator, which is Gorgotha. We have an attack support troop, which is our Arachnean Weaver. Then we have an attack mana troop or class here, which I'm using the Doomed Axe weapon, but I'm using the Stormcaller class, which we'll get into as also a mana generator. And then finally we have a spell attack with this Teleka troop here that's going to be doing spell damage. So Gorgotha is a popular defense troop for very good reason, and if you notice here, it does defense really well with a high reduction of damage from skulls by 75%, and then it also will explode 22 gems on the board, which is pretty much the entire board, and that is a really good mana generator, as well as it also supports, it offers a little bit of support for itself by cleansing itself when it is cast. So if it's webbed and its magic will be reduced to 0, you'll have to cast it first and to cleanse it, but at least it has a way to cleanse itself, which makes it pretty good. Moving on to our second troop here, which is going to fill 3 different roles, but 2 of them are more powerful than the other one. So its primary use is attack. This troop does spell attack in the form of true damage by bypassing any armor. Now, as you can see here, it will do 33 damage, true damage to the last 2 enemies. Now, it offers support by webbing enemies, which is, it's going to do that when you cast it. And webbing reduces enemy magic to 0. Now, the other part where it offers support is that it has a 75% chance to summon a troop right here. And that's if you open up all of its traits. So that's really great as well. That keeps you in the battle longer. Also, if it kills an enemy, it will explode 15 gems, and that's not based on your magic. So even if you have a very low magic, you're low level in the game, and you do get lucky to get this Arachnean Weaver troop, you will be able to explode those gems every single time as long as you kill an enemy with this troop. So that will, it'll also function as a mana generator when it does explode those 15 gems. Now, for our hero class and weapon, it's going to fill 2 roles, basically. It's going to do attack, because this weapon is going to be doing spell damage to all enemies, and it will also convert purple gems to doom skulls, so it will be doing skull damage as well. That's both of those basic attack types in one weapon, which is great. Now, the other thing that it's going to do for us is act as a secondary mana generator. And this is the Stormcaller class, and it conjures a light storm every time my turn begins. And you can see right here, once you unlock the final trait on this class, that's what it will do. Now, this combined with Gorgatha and the possible explosion by the Weaver makes for fast mana, and it really does. So, for those of you that don't know, Light Storm will bring down more yellow gems on the board, and when you explode the board, it makes room for that to happen. So Gorgatha also takes yellow, and as you're probably noticing already, this whole team uses yellow mana. Now finally, we have our legendary troop here that does 1 role, which is damage. We're doing spell damage with it. And it's going to be doing scatter damage, but that scatter damage deals triple damage if there's an active storm. But since we're using the Stormcaller class, there's going to be a light storm active every turn, so this troop will do triple damage when we cast it, which this is going to be over 100 damage to the enemy every time we cast this. Now, there's another thing that's kind of unique to this troop, but there are other troops that do this, but this one has quite a high number on it, and that is that it will deal passive attack damage when you have 4 or 5 gems on the board that you match. This troop will do 10 damage to a random enemy. Now, what's great with this team, is that the storm that we have active and the Gorgatha troop exploding the board, we're going to get a lot of 4 or 5 matches, so that's just going to be bonus damage that's going on right there. So let's look at these 2 teams here, the basic one and the advanced one, and take notice of the different order that I have these troops in, and notice also how both teams don't have mana overlapping each other too much. This team over here, the basic one, I have every single color covered. The advanced team, I have every color except red covered on this. So if I did find a hero weapon that had red and yellow, I could put that in here and change this weapon and still use the same class, and then I would have everything covered. But I just decided to go with this weapon straight yellow because I have so much yellow that's generated in this team. But as you can see, I got most colors covered, and each troop has some different color in it, and that's really important to do that, because you don't want to block mana colors, and it's especially true not to block mana colors from your mana generator troops, because you want your mana generator troops to power up first so that they can give lots of mana to the other troops, especially your attack troops. So, for example, here Gorgatha is our mana generator. We want him to power up quickly so we can explode him, and then a lot of mana will go to these other troops. So let's talk a little bit about storms and storm troops. So as I just explained, when a storm is active, it means that that color is going to come down on the board more often for the next 8 turns. Now there are these different colors have different names here associated with them, and it's pretty obvious what they are. A blue gem is an ice storm, or ice storm is blue gems. Leaf storm is green gems. Firestorm is red gems. And light storm is yellow gems. And dark storm is purple gems. And finally, the dust storm is brown gems. And the one thing that makes mana generators great is an active storm. Now, let's take a look at what an active storm can do for your team. I'm going to show you a little bit of my advanced team in action here. So once I get Gorgatha powered up, I'm going to explode the board, and notice how much yellow mana, because down here at the bottom, this little yellow orb, that is my light storm. And when I exploded the boards, lots of yellow came down on the board, so much that all of my troops got full, like almost immediately, within seconds. And as you can see here, not even a minute goes by, and I just demolish the enemy team with that. So storms really do make your teams more powerful, especially when you combine it with that mana generator. Now, it could be something else besides Gorgatha, but if you match up the storm with certain colors in your team, it'll make your team all that more powerful. So I have some troops or classes and weapons here that'll help you create these storms on your teams. So for an ice storm, we have a mythic troop here, Skady, which if you trade it all the way to the end, it will create an ice storm at the start of every turn, which will make blue gems come down on the board way more often. And if you don't have that Jar of Eyes, once you fully upgrade that weapon, and you can get this weapon from one of the factions in the Underworld. So every Tuesday, just keep your eye out, and this will show up in that faction event shop if you don't have it. And once you get it, you can upgrade it with ingots, and it will be able to generate an ice storm every single time that you cast it. Now for Dark Storm, there is a legendary troop in the game called Umberwolf, which once you trade it all the way to the end there, it will create a Dark Storm at the start of every turn. For a Firestorm, we have a class called the Sun Spear, which once you trade that, it will create a Firestorm at the start of every turn. For a Light Storm, and this is what you saw me use just in that video with my advanced team, is the Stormcaller class, which once you trade that, it will conjure a light storm every time you start a turn. And for Dust Storm, we don't really have a troop that will... we don't have a troop or a class that will create a Dust Storm at the start of every turn, unfortunately. But we do have a really great weapon in the game which can keep a Dust Storm going constantly, and that is Mountain Crusher. And you can use this weapon with any team in, or any hero class in the game. Some of them, I think, work better with it than others, but you can use it with any hero class, which makes it versatile. And, yeah, you do have to upgrade it with ingots up to level 6 here is where you're going to be able to unlock creating the Dust Storm whenever you use this weapon. And then, finally, we do have a troop here, Harpy Mage, which you can get from the Stone Song Eerie faction in the Underworld. Is one of those troops. And it starts with like 75% mana, and it explodes like up to 20 gems on the board, and then it creates a Dust Storm. So it is a really good mana generator, and I do recommend going and trying to get that if you don't have it yet. And now finally for the Leaf Storm, this is one of those colors that's kind of left out in the Storm area. We don't have any really great weapons or troops that generates a Leaf Storm every turn. Now, the best troop that I would say creates a Leaf Storm is probably this Hieronath. It has a pretty low mana cost, and it will summon a Leaf Storm every time that you cast it. Plus, it will give all of your allies a certain amount of armor based on your magic. So it's basically a support troop, and it will also generate that Leaf Storm for you. And a newer troop, which is pretty useless except for this one thing, Dandelion, will also generate a Leaf Storm when you cast it. So those are the different troops and classes and weapons that I recommend for creating Leaf Storms, or just, any storm that you want. Pick out your team, your damage, and your troops that you want for attacking, and then pick out a mana generator, and then maybe you can throw in one of these different troops to generate more of that color of mana on the board. So in summary, the foundation of building a team is attack and mana generation. Defense and support roles help keep your team in the fight longer but won't guarantee a win. Number 1, decide what type of attack you want to do. 2, find a troop that will generate fast mana to your attack troops. Number 3, use defense and support troops in a way that won't conflict with your attack or mana generating troops. And that's about it for the basics of team building in Gems of War. And that right there is the end of this little video. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Maybe you guys learned some things, maybe you didn't. That's basically how I think about building teams. And, obviously there are many different ways you can go about building teams, but those, in my opinion, are the basic roles and thoughts behind building a powerful team in Gems of War. So go out there and have fun, guys, and thanks for watching as always. Please leave a like on this video if you found it useful, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.